In the story of Sonic Prime's first season, Sonic himself interacts with many different characters, some of which are alternate versions of characters we're familiar with. Some characters get along pretty well, while others not so much.
You heard the baby. Energy extractor.
And today, we're gonna explore those relationships. I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and this is Sonic Prime Season 1 Relationships Healthy to Toxic. First off, we want to make a few points. We'll only focus on characters who played a prominent role in the series so far, and we'll treat each alternate version of a character as their own character. If characters mostly stick to a group, we'll likely put that group as one entry, unless a relationship within that group in particular stands out. And lastly, spoilers ahead. As usual, we'll start with the healthiest relationship and work our way down to the most toxic. These are the healthy relationships, and the healthiest bond we found in the series thus far was between Sonic and Tails. These two actually don't spend a lot of time together in the first season, but the moments they do share are very meaningful. Like in many other stories, these two are best friends, and they help each other out in the battle against Eggman. In the battles leading up to the Paradox Prism breaking, Tails alerts Sonic multiple times that he's about to do exactly what Eggman wants. Sonic doesn't listen and attacks anyways. This understandably frustrates Tails, but not for long. Sonic quickly locates Tails in his shop and sincerely apologizes for not listening. Despite Tails not even looking at him at first, he does quickly forgive Sonic, and their strong bond is restored. This goes to show that even the best of friends can have their issues, but a strong bond can quickly resolve them. The silver medal for healthy relationship goes to Sonic's main group of friends: Knuckles, Amy, Rouge, and Tails, and their connection with each other. There are very few moments seeing these characters where they aren't together. They fight as a team against Eggman, and are seen planning strategies together. One scene shows them talking, agreeing that they should stay together as they pursue Eggman up the mountain, while Sonic runs off on his own to collect rings, which they're all mutually annoyed by. The rest stick with the plan. They got to the battle way before Sonic did, and they fought off many of the robots despite being outnumbered. Their great coordination proves that numbers alone do not win a battle. If a group, regardless of size, works well together and coordinates their actions to be most effective, they can achieve wonderful things. Our bronze medal for healthy relationship is awarded to Sonic and Nine. Nine is an alternate version of Tails in New York City. It's made clear early on that this version is very isolated and keeps almost completely to himself. When Sonic meets Nine, he hasn't realized yet what is going on, and assumes this is the Tails that he already knows.
When we stick together, we never lose.
This allows him to connect with Nine relatively quickly, especially after he tells Nine about his connection with the original Tails, and all the cool things about him. While reluctant at first, Nine eventually opens up a bit to Sonic. When Sonic returns to the city later, Nine shows him a world where no one else lives and invites Sonic to be there with him. Considering Nine started off staying away from everyone, and actually connected with anyone at all, even if it's just one person, we have hopes for him for any future seasons to make more connections and friends. With the healthy relationships wrapped up, we now work our way into neutral territory. These relationships fall in the gray area. At the peak of this category is the connection between Sonic and Knuckles. It is true that Sonic has a decent relationship with his friends in general, but the one with Knuckles specifically is a little more strained. Out of anyone in the group, Knuckles appears to be the one most annoyed by Sonic, though he still respects him enough to work with him. What also doesn't help comes after Sonic arrives in New York City the first time. While still trying to get his bearings, he calls out for his friends, following it up with saying, "I'll even take Knuckles at this point." At least the way they feel about each other seems relatively mutual, and maybe they'll have a chance to connect more in any possible future seasons. Our next entry is a 2-for-1, as it covers the relationship between Sonic and Renegade Knux and Rebel Rouge. These versions of the characters are in a position similar to that found in Sonic Forces. They're hiding in a bunker of sorts as they look for a way to rebel against the Chaos Council, who have all but completely destroyed their home. When Sonic comes into the picture, and they see he has a mutual dislike for the Eggman, they quickly team up and strengthen their attack. Sonic helps them a great deal, even teaching moves like Spin Dash. What puts them in the neutral territory happens after Sonic vanishes the first time. Despite everything they went through, they automatically assume that he ditched them.
Never thought I'd see your smug mug again.
Thankfully though, this gets explained and they fight together once again. Even when this happens a second time, they're slightly annoyed, but it's not focused on for too long. The season ending the way it did indicates the fight is far from over. If they keep fighting together the way they have, their bond will likely strengthen. We go from one world to another now as we explore Knuckles the Dread and his new pirate crew. Through his backstory, it's clear that this version of Knuckles isn't the most caring captain. With his old crew, it was demonstrated that he cared more for the treasure than his crew's safety. Upon their ship being destroyed, the old crew fully realizes this and abandons him, forming their own crew. Knuckles does a bit better with his new crew, who look like the characters that we recognize, but it could still use some work. It's implied they often do fun things together, such as when a limbo contest is initiated. However, when he is finally convinced to go after the treasure again, that's when things go downhill a bit. The closer they get to it, the more the treasure becomes the only thing he can focus on. This almost becomes a repeat of what happened with his old crew, but he actually gets to the treasure this time. Unfortunately, the way he acts after grabbing it is the last we see of him this season. Hopefully, he thinks more about his crew in the future, now that he got what he wanted. Now we step away from the Knuckles variants to discuss one of Amy's, specifically with Rusty Rose and her bond with pretty much anyone. More often than not, Rusty Rose is seen working for the Chaos Council, aka the bad guys.
You will need all the breath you can muster if you are to survive.
However, when Nine is able to reprogram her briefly, she quickly shifts and fights alongside the heroes, contributing greatly towards their success. This implies that Rusty Rose will work with anyone, without even questioning it, depending on how she was programmed at the time. It helps her a little bit that she voluntarily held her crew's fire against Knuckles the Dread's ship after she saw Black Rose. Maybe Nine, or anyone capable, can create a more permanent program in the future to keep her on the side of good. If not, it's made apparent that she can think somewhat for herself. Maybe she'll work with the heroes on her own accord in the future. Following that is the relationship of another Amy variant, Thorn Rose, and the other Forest variants. This includes the likes of Prim, Hangry, Mangy, and Gnarly. It is helpful to them that their backstory and how their Season 1 story ended showed them all in good spirits with each other. However, it's a lot of what happens in between that knocks them down a few spots. Almost every moment we see of these characters, they are at odds with each other, and it turns out that much of it could have been easily prevented. With the group, their greed was what ultimately triggered Thorn to get incredibly upset, but the way Thorn responded after initially asking them to stop didn't help matters. She forced them to live in the treetops so that they couldn't harm the forest below, but Thorn failed to realize at first that by covering the forest floor from the sky, the plants wouldn't get any sunlight. This results in her doing as much harm to the forest, if not more, than anybody else was. After everyone talks it out a bit more, especially with Sonic's help, they do reform their bond. Our final entry in the neutral category is the Chaos Council and their connection to each other. Yes, they are all Eggman variants, and yes, they are all evil. However, these five do actually work together relatively well. When they're just sitting around and talking or plotting, they unanimously agree on pretty much everything, even if a couple of them seem disinterested at times. That is the strength of their relationship. Their weakness comes whenever any or all of them actually join the fight going on in their city. They might yell at each other or get upset if one of them messes up somehow. If they can find a way to stay calm and collected in battle, the same way they are when just talking, they'd be a much stronger and threatening group. Finally, we've reached the bonds that could seriously use some work. These are the toxic relationships. Staying just out of the bottom three is the relationship between Sonic and Shadow. Long story short, these two are usually either fighting, both verbally and physically, or showing great distaste for each other. Even when Sonic is simply introducing Shadow to the viewing audience, Sonic calls him things like a buzzkill. He even goes as far as to subtly mock Shadow's air shoes.
And by the way, he roller skates.
After Shadow gets stuck in between worlds, most of their interactions just have Shadow telling Sonic to do things like run faster and don't stop running. The season doesn't end on a positive note either. These two come face to face again. Shadow gets upset with Sonic for apparently making their home disappear, and it cuts just as Shadow punches him yet again. We wouldn't be surprised if they learn to work together more at some point, but right now though, it doesn't look too good. For our bronze medal of toxic relationships, we have to go with Knuckles the Dread and his old crew. This connection is like that of Sonic and Shadow's in that it has yet to truly be resolved. As mentioned earlier, Knuckles the Dread had a different crew before he had the one that we've come to know. After their ship was wrecked and they left him behind, the old crew formed a crew of their own. From that point on, they have been at odds with each other. The old crew attacks them at one point and raids their ship while most of Knuckles' crew hide at first. After this incident, we don't really see much of them afterwards, so the connection with their former captain is still severed. We aren't sure if their relationship will ever be restored, but they will certainly have the opportunity to do so if the Chaos Council attacks again and they work together to stop them. For our silver medal of toxicity, we're awarding it to Sonic and every version of Eggman. This includes the original that we all know and love and the Chaos Council. No matter which version it is, Sonic is one of their biggest enemies and threats to stop their plans.
Let's see how powerful he is.
They all essentially threaten or mock Sonic or his friends at some point, which greatly upsets him. It's also notable that while Eggman is trying to take over the world, the Chaos Council, in a sense, has successfully done that. Regardless of the situation or version of the character, Sonic is constantly fighting against them. He even does his fair share of mocking them when he finds an opportunity. Every single version also has thought of ways to use Sonic's power against them in some way. This is one relationship that we doubt will ever be resolved. We're definitely rooting for Sonic to bring his allies together to stop these madmen. Finally, for our gold medal of toxic relationship, we're giving it to the Chaos Council and practically everybody else. Aside from the original Eggman, the Chaos Council are the overarching villains in the story thus far. They've taken over what is now known as New York City, and everybody else there is downright miserable. They almost always have a look of defeat on their face, and it's implied that they're afraid to step out of line even slightly. When the robots all shut down briefly, they have a glimmer of hope and light returns in their eyes during that time. This quickly gets reverted once everything comes back online. They also have captured multiple people, such as Sonic and Nine, to use their abilities and technology to their advantage. As they progress in this field, they realize that they can travel to other worlds. It isn't enough that they took over already. They want more. The first time they open one of their own portals, they have Rusty Rose go to the world of the pirates and they immediately attack. And this is only the first time they attempted this. Chances are that they themselves will harness this technology further and make themselves bigger threats to other worlds as well. They make an enemy out of pretty much anyone they come across, especially if someone stands in their way. We doubt they'll ever even want to redeem themselves, so their relationships with everybody will likely be forever toxic. But let us know in the comments section if you agree, and tell us what you think of Sonic Prime so far. Make sure to hit that notification bell and binge our other videos, including our Sonic Prime Good to Evil. But most importantly, stay wicked.